Robots are coming to a restaurant near you. How the hell do we design for that? Stay tuned. Hey kids, and welcome to Design by Wingnut Social. I'm your host, interior decorator Darla Jethro Powell, and I had a very interesting conversation today with Robert Ancill of T&I Design. He is a restaurant designer, hospitality designer, and high-end luxury designer, and our focus of the show today was restaurant design. What is it? If you're an interior designer who wants to switch over to hospitality and restaurant design, what does he recommend that you do to get into that? And how robots are taking over the world. All right, let's get into my conversation. But of course, here we go. I got to tell you about him. Robert Ancill has spent over 25 years in the restaurant industry, designing and overseeing the launch and operations of over 40 new restaurant brands and 500 plus restaurant or cafe openings and remodels. That's a whole hell of a lot, folks. His projects have taken him to 24 countries where he's worked with clients in a wide range of businesses, from restaurants and hotels to offices and luxury homes. Robert is particularly experienced in franchising and development in international markets. Super interesting conversation, folks. Don't go anywhere. Wingnuts, help me in welcoming Robert Ancill to the show. Hey there, Robert Ancill. Thank you for joining me today on the podcast. How the hell are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. And we're talking about a subject that's near and dear to my heart and my stomach. We're talking about restaurants and restaurant design. I should probably stay out of a few.
Yeah, me too.
Menopause has not been kind, but that's your specialty is restaurant design. We were talking in the green room. That's how you got your start, your bread and butter kind of situation at T&I Design, right? So tell us a little bit about that and your journey, and we'll get into restaurant design. And I think this is the first time we've discussed it on the show. So, yay.
Well, my background is actually I have always been in restaurants, and I started off in kitchens and restaurants, managing them, and I just ended up working for companies that were opening up lots of restaurants that were, and I became very involved in layouts and floor plans and design and so on. And it's just something that I loved and just something that, I just completely migrated to. I was given the opportunity to set up my own business, and it was a restaurant consulting business, and really focused on concept development, which was essentially my background. Since then, I just designed a lot of restaurants. I mean, we at that point it was the next idea. The T&I and T&I Design stands for the next idea, and it was a full consultancy. It was a full restaurant consultancy, literally creating concepts across the world: India, Middle East, obviously America, the UK. And parts of Africa, and it was going very, very well. But the strongest division was by far the interior design and architecture. And so what started to happen was that a lot of our clients would say, "Hey, come design our house," and "Hey, come design our office," and we would do that. But what would happen is that we would end up getting referred, and then so people would come to us and say, I was referred to you to come and design my new 20,000 square feet luxury home, but I looked you up online, and you're a restaurant consultant. How does that work? And so it became pretty evident that our message was extremely not clear. And we were in the business of making messaging clear. So in 2015, we split the company. The next idea remains as is, and we set up the T&I Design as a sister company. It all comes under the T&I group, and that focused on interior design and architecture comprehensively. Our business is still probably about 60% restaurants, hotels, cafes, hospitality in general. And then about 40% of our business commercial and luxury residential. We don't do much on the sort of the lower end, but we do a lot of luxury residential and multifamily.
Sure. So there's probably a lot of designers in the audience who are listening who would like to break into what it is that you're doing now. Hospitality, say that 10 times, hospitality design and restaurants. But I want to back up a little bit. And you said you were working in restaurants. Are you a chef? Were you actually working in restaurants, or were you doing the design or some other facet of work in a restaurant?
Definitely not a chef, although I worked in kitchens. No, I entered in the way most people entered in, and My first job was actually a bouncer in a bar in Glasgow, which will
How
never
fun.
leave my mind. Um, and I loved it. And my mother was into food and into catering, and we sort of grew up in nice restaurants, as in going to them. But I just loved it. And so yes, to start off with, I was actually working in restaurants, and then as my career progressed and I became sort of in a more corporate environment, I'd get very involved, and I'd often get called in, if you like, to advise on certain floor plans and so on from an operational standpoint. And really, it just sort of it went from there. I wouldn't say it was an unusual beginning, but you tend to find in the restaurant business a lot of people at a senior level in the construction, architect, design, but in different departments, all started off as a dishwasher or a waiter or something. I mean, I'm working with
Right.
a large group now, and the client there, who's head of all development and construction, that started off as a dishwasher, and now sort of several years on, he's head of everything. I guess I don't know, but so that's not uncommon in the restaurant world. Yeah.
I love that. So your design background, so where did you get your design background in order to inform these decisions when you started? Because if you're going from working in a restaurant to designing the restaurant, there's a missing piece there.
Yeah. I think I dreamt it up is the honest answer. I certainly didn't get trained, although I did train myself, and you get trained when you
Yeah.
make mistakes. Education is expensive, no matter how you learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm very familiar. I've made a lot. I'm not trained either. I made a lot of mistakes. I called it I used to say it was cheaper than a college education. A lot of people don't think that's funny, but I did.
And not to contradict you, but I think in some cases it's a lot more expensive than college. But it depends on how big the mistake is. And I would admit to a few.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, really, it was. I was self-taught. I loved it. Strangely, when I was at school, I was told not to go into architecture and design. So I think that probably dissuaded me from pursuing that at college, and instead did hotel catering management at college. But yeah, it was self-taught, and really just learned, and obviously inspired by other
Mhm.
designs and other restaurants, and I think the fact that I worked across the world was extremely helpful, because
Yeah.
you learn so much when you go to different companies.
I know I love that. And I asked that for a reason because there's a lot of designers in the audience who are self-taught, and they'll be consulting with architects or contractors, or they'll have designers on the team who are NCIDQ and all of that. So they have their bases covered. But I see a lot of principals, a lot of visionaries, a lot of big picture design firm owners who are self-taught. And
Yes.
I'm sure that that is, inspirational for a lot of people listening. And I always tell people when they reach out to me and say, how did you start your interior design firm, even though you didn't get education? I always say, go get your education. I'm never going to discourage someone or say not to do it. But if you don't, or, for whatever reason, hire the people who have it, and then just be big picture person, big designer, big.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's certainly in my opinion anyway. There is no substitute for a formal education, because there you learn about different styles and things that certainly people like me, I'm not sure you, but certainly people like me never really studied and never really understood. And we just go out
Mhm.
and we design. And maybe that's an advantage, and maybe that's a disadvantage, but certainly for me, it hasn't hurt. But I do agree. I think if you have the opportunity to get that college education, the foundation is invaluable. There's
Yeah.
definitely a sort of slight movement at the moment saying, well, you don't need to go to college anymore. You can get everything online for free. And that may well be true. I still think that the social element of college and the education that you get at college or university is
Yeah.
valuable, and especially in design and architecture.
Yeah, I just wanted it's our little disclaimer, but at the end of the day, I mean, there's so many. I mean, look, you have a huge firm, incredibly successful. So and inspirational. We went down a little rabbit hole, but I thought that's important for people to hear. Okay, so you're designing restaurants, you're growing your firm. So let's fast forward a bit. And again, I want to speak to aspirational designers in the audience who want to get into hospitality and restaurant design, and talk about just getting their foot in the door with doing it, what the difference is between, doing restaurant design and general commercial design. Let's just start there and say, where does one get even started in getting into this industry?
Certainly if someone wants to get into the industry, the obvious starting point, education, and then find a firm that specializes in hospitality and just bug the hell out of them until you can get in. Now, I get asked, well, how do I get in? They have 200 applications. How do I make mine different? And the honest answer is, and again, this is what I would do. Not saying it's the right thing to do. Apart from the obvious, in terms of make sure that resume is absolutely 100% perfect, no spelling mistakes, it reads correctly, and so on. And is do some designs. Just go out, pick a Starbucks, pick a Panera Bread, and just, this is how I would design it and why, and create something that's very specific for that firm that you think will at least get their attention. And certainly it will. I mean, if we get something, we obviously get a lot of resumes, and the only thing that we focus on is the creative part. We check the resume, very interesting. We make sure there's no big gaps and that there's no sort of I'm here 2 months and here 3 months and that kind of thing, especially after college. But the most important thing we look at is the creative component. If someone makes the effort to do something specific, whether we like it or not, but they've just made the effort to show creativity and they've explained it, they're literally guaranteed an interview, and it's on them from there.
You're about to get inundated with creative resumes.
Great. I love that.
At TNI. Okay, so that's terrific advice for anybody. And of course, you just graduated the education route. Let's say I'm Susan McNuggets and I'm sitting out there and I already have an interior design firm. I've been doing maybe residential, and I said, residential maybe isn't my cup of tea anymore. I really want to get into hospitality. It's commercial design from what I've heard. I've never done commercial design. Is less stressful in a lot of ways than interior residential. And maybe somebody wants to make that shift and start with a restaurant design. Where does an experienced interior designer start?
Someone who, it would be the same place. You really need to join a firm unless you're lucky enough to get a client who's willing to take a chance on you. And I've seen people who've offered clients their services for free just to get it on their portfolio. And it's worked. So that's also a decent strategy, but not everyone can afford to do that because you're looking at a lot of your personal time, given that you've probably got a job of some description to do that. So, that's one way, but the other way is focus on the right firms and try and get in there and get that experience. And from there, it's you can either go on your own, you can, grow your career with the larger firms or so on. But there are different routes in there. So I guess it's either try and find a client directly or go to a firm that specializes.
So what is it that interior designers don't know that they don't know when it comes to restaurant design if they're thinking of pivoting?
I'm still figuring it out. I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, let's say they're doing commercial design. They're doing storefronts. They're doing residential design and commercial design. But what is it that's specific to restaurant design that both of your answers have been go with a firm who has experience in doing this? You know what I mean? So it seems like there's a little bit of a learning curve there. What are some of the things that contribute to that learning curve?
I certainly believe that anyone who has a flair for interior design can do restaurants and hospitality being hotels, family entertainment centers, and so on. The big difference, especially when it comes to restaurants, is floor plan and layout. You have to really think about several journeys. So we talk a lot about the customer journey. Well, you have to talk about the employee journey because the employee has to get the food to the customer. Now we're talking about the robotic journey because we're going to start seeing over the next 10 years, restaurants switching out front of house servers, front of house being the guest area, essentially, not kitchen. We're going to start seeing robots delivering to tables. That's already we're already designing it. It's already been planned. I know several groups that are doing it. That's going to grow.
Where is that happening now that you're designing that for? Where are you seeing that?
Well, we're seeing it in food halls. We're seeing it in fast casual. So whereas a server might bring or a runner might bring food to the table, robots are going to start doing that. Very, very new, hitting the market. Essentially, it hit the market last year, maybe before, but it's only becoming prevalent in 2023, and we're actually planning it in now. But robots are going to play a huge part in restaurants for the next 10 to 20 years, and after that, it's just a given. You have to really understand that. You have to make those pathways accessible. you have to, obviously there's a whole ADA component with wheelchairs and so on.
Sure.
But um, I think a lot of certainly a lot of designers that I've met new to restaurants, good designers, but new to restaurants, haven't really thought that through because they've never had to before. And so that is one major difference. Things like lighting are hugely important. So if you take a retail store, for example, I don't know, maybe Nike. I don't know much about it, so I might be wrong here. But typically, their lighting is going to be the same throughout the day. A restaurant, a well-designed restaurant, will adjust its lighting from breakfast, lunch to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
There could even be three settings, and the reason for that is as customer moods change during the day. Lunchtime has to be way more bright because really we're looking to speed up the experience. In many cases, people only have a set time for lunch, especially if they're working. Whereas nighttime, more subdued, much more relaxing, because they have longer. And so there's these type of elements that need to be addressed that very often will not be addressed by someone who hasn't been in that environment and who hasn't, lived the design process. There's a number of different elements that we have to be aware of. So even though designers typically don't get involved with back of house, they need to be aware of health and safety and the code with health and safety, because there's small design elements that have to be that essentially have to be included in the design. And sometimes they're not pretty, so you have to pretty them up but still make them compliant. So there's a number of different elements, like I said, that need to be addressed.
I mean, that's just off the top of your head. That's a
Yeah.
lot. How important is the psychology of the design? That goes to the psychology component. You mentioned lighting, mood lighting. From lunch, it's brighter. We want to get people in. We want to get people out. At night, it's more subdued. I imagine there's a component there with colors, like Burger King. Burger King's fast food, but it's red. Exciting. A lot of food has red, and these excitable colors for food design. Is that something you guys have like on file? You learned at this, like there's a Bible of restaurant psychology, or is it something that changes per client?
Yes, there is a color psychology. Red's a food color. Interestingly, blue is not.
Yeah, I can't think of any place I eat whose colors are blue.
Yeah, and yet we will still use it, but we'll use it carefully.
Mm-hmm.
But red and the different shades of red are very much food colors, and you'll see that a lot in fast food because, of course, again,
Yeah.
it's a racier color and so on, and fast, racy, so it goes together. But yes, there is a psychology of colors. There's a psychology of materials, fabrics, and I think certainly we believe that there's a psychology now because of all the planetary changes and so on. We're going to find that there's a psychology behind sustainable materials. So, for example, using hemp, using bamboo, versus using, let's say, more of a fake wood or a real wood, but it's obviously new and obviously cut down a few trees to use it. So, yes, is the answer. There's a lot of psychology in restaurant design. What's interesting is that there's a limited version of sort of really being able to address all those items and all those elements without messing it up. And that's kind of where it gets interesting.
All right. Well, I definitely see where we're saying go train with a firm that has this experience. And now I'm really starting to kind of see why your education was way more expensive than college.
Well, some of my employers at the beginning were paying for my education. It didn't go down that well either. There was no such thing as a student loan.
Is there tells you I don't have my interior design degree or anything. Is there like a specificity degree for this particular genre of interior design, or is it really just once you graduate, you're going to learn this on the job?
I don't believe so is the honest answer. I've never come across a specialist hospitality design school. Now, what I have seen is I do see some courses focusing or providing, whether it's a semester, whatever, that focuses on hospitality and addresses all the different areas. But I certainly haven't seen a specific course, although it's a good idea. We might look at it.
There you go. Some CEU stuff going on. All right. So, Robert, what's the biggest challenge that you see happening today with restaurant design?
It's definitely sustainability. The reason for that is that there's a number of components within that. So number one, you have a consumer demand where they're looking for restaurants that are designed with sustainability in mind. Then you have the reality of designing a restaurant with sustainability in mind. Take something like hemp, which is a great material. We've used it. It's just not as robust as, let's say, natural wood. But natural wood is not sustainable. I mean, okay, there's sustainable wood farms, but it's not quite what we're talking about. And also, it's generally, not always, but generally more expensive if you buy a reclaimed wood versus a new wood. You're going to be paying up to about 50%, in some cases more, if it's treated than the actual wood. So, here we are essentially in a recessionary environment, whether we're in a recession or not. We've got high inflation, where it's going to be very difficult to persuade a client to go with the sustainability side versus try and keep the fit out costs and the capital costs as low as possible. So that's challenge number one. Challenge number two is really looking into the future and making sure that you are covering what's happening within the restaurant industry. So we talked about robots before, but there's also things that have been live for over 10 years, such as kiosk ordering as opposed to face-to-face ordering with an employee, with a cashier. Again, these things have to be integrated. People are becoming more used to them. Not everyone likes them. So how do you create that balance? But I think what we're going to find is cost is just going to be a huge factor. And it always has been, but certainly over the next few years, it's going to be very dramatic. And then again, how we integrate new technology is of paramount importance.
So let's touch on the robot thing, because that fascinates me. And you're more privy to this than anything I've heard of or seen, because you're designing for this eventuality and actually reality, right? Are we talking like full-blown Rosie the Riveter coming down the aisle, giving you your tray of hamburgers? Or is this more like a assembly line kind of Ford Motors kind of food thing?
So at the moment, what they are is they're essentially, I don't know if you ever remember Doctor Who and you had Daleks, but essentially they're on wheels and they have trays on them, and the kitchen will put the tray onto the tray of the robot. The robot then goes and takes it out to the customer. Customer takes it off the robot, and then when the customer's finished, the robot will come over and the customer will load up the trays on the robot. That's what we're seeing right now, and that's what's on the market right now. I would say within probably 10 years, maybe sooner, we will start to see robots with legs and arms, and we're going to see AI hit a different level. Whether we approve of AI or not, it's simply with
it's
this.
happening.
It's happening. It's not going to stop the roller coaster. And I think, yes, you are going to start having robot servers within a set time. Not quite sure what that set time looks like. I'm going to say 10 years because it sounds about right. Could be sooner, could be later. But that is definitely going to happen, yes. There's already voice recognition with robots and so on. And then in the kitchen, there's currently robots. There's Flippy, which is exactly as it says. It flips burgers and adds cheese. And it's still very, very early, but it's doing great. But we're going to see that grow as well, and I think we're going to see kitchens being more robotic at different levels. And what that looks like is still, it's almost who gets there first. Is, and there's obviously companies out there working on it. McDonald's is quite far ahead. Obviously, they've always been pretty advanced with how their kitchens operate. Yeah. So they're quite far ahead with their development. But there's plenty of others. And those, the more independents or the smaller chains, they'll catch up real fast. So
I'm envisioning are they using like those invisible tracks in the floors? Like, to guide the robots? Are they following, you know what I mean? Like Disney World has those rides now where there's no tracks. They're just following. Have you seen that? Is it something similar?
I have. They're more, the path is programmed. And they're following that. So I don't even know if the path is put on the floor. I think it's just programmed into the memory.
Oh, I see. Like a Roomba.
And then they follow it. Yeah, exactly. So table XYZ is this way. Table, ABC is cool. This way, and so on. and that's how it works. Yeah, and then there's different ways of doing it without getting too technical. But you can put
Hmm.
like beepers on the table, and then the robot knows to go to that table, but it knows the map, so it knows the road map, if you like, a little bit like Waze for robots, and it goes to the table.
That is so cool. I had no idea we were that close to getting
Oh
that.
yeah,
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 wow. That's insane. And of course we could have a whole other show on that,
yeah.
people losing their jobs to robots. I don't know if you watch South Park, but they had that whole infamous episode where they took my job.
It's happening. And sadly, it's happening,
Yeah.
and we have to rethink it because it's going to
Yeah.
be an enormous problem. I mean, they're saying that up to like 300 million jobs will be lost within the next 20 years to
Hmm.
AI or technology, because it obviously covers different aspects. So, I think that's true, and I
Yeah.
think we need to find new jobs and new solutions, which we can. We're human. We're able to do that.
Yeah, we can adapt. We're not going to be Blockbuster for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Robert, is there anything that I've forgotten to ask you on this topic that you think that the aspiring restaurant designer needs to know before we head into the fire round?
The only thing that I would say, and again, this is my personal opinion, but it really is down to the individual. I think if this is what you're interested in, you'll find a way, and you have to persevere. There is no room, especially not in this country, where if you don't persevere, you're going to succeed. You have to be relentless in your quest, and just be humble, but not be scared, and you'll do great.
I love that. Terrific advice. Now, Robert Ansell, I have to ask you, are you ready for the What Up Wingnut round?
I think so. I don't know. Am I?
What would the hashtag on your tombstone be?
He did it. I hope.
You're stuck on a deserted island, but you can have one food forever. What's it going to be?
Oh, lobster.
Oh, well, okay. Good one. Last but not least, please recommend a book that has impacted you either personally or professionally.
There's been many. There was Good to Great. I think that was a great book. Not
Mhm.
because it was just so well written. It wasn't. But it made you think about how companies progressed, and if you're able, and I personalized it, and for me it was a great book.
All right, cool. Robert, please tell the listeners where they can go to find out more about you and TNI, and we'll call it a day.
Okay. Well, you can look me up, Robert Ancill, on Google, and the company has its own website, of course, tnidesign.com. And just it has all of our contact details and some of our projects, and yeah, enjoy.
All right, Robert. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Get ready for that those resumes to come flooding in. That's Ansel, Anci, two L's, guys.
I'm more interested in the designs.
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun? The designs for the robots. You should get some really good ones there. We're from Cheat GPT, maybe we'll do a few. I like to call it. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I had no idea that we're actually actively doing hospitality and restaurant design to make way for the robot overlords, for our robot overlords who are just starting out delivering little trays to us, but will eventually, be taking over the world. Skynet, anybody? So cool. I mean, I've seen the kiosks in McDonald's because I frequent McDonald's way too much. That's another story for another podcast, probably a menopausal weight loss podcast. But, and I've seen that, but to the point to where, the Dalek is coming out and giving you that is, I want to see that. Because I'm such a nerd, I'd like to see it. But on the other hand, they're taking their jobs. If you haven't seen that South Park episode, just Google it. There are taking our jobs episode. Highly entertaining. I'm a 13-year-old boy. That's my humor. If you tune into Designed by Wingnut Social, you can see my action figures in the background. Sorry, not sorry. Not sorry about it. Not one little tiny bit. It was super fascinating. So Robert, of course, incredibly gifted, had a terrific career path to get where he is today. Super high-end, successful interior design firm. Goals for all interior designers in that milieu or that genre of design for sure. No education, no formal education, I should say. I'm sure could run circles around anyone who's just graduated from college and then some in this industry for sure, and learn the hard way. So it can be done, right? If you're out there and you're thinking, boy, I am not, I don't have my degree. I do have a firm, or I am in design, but I'm super, super talented. Let's see how creative you are. Let's see how good you are at design. Send him those resumes. Sorry, Robert. But again, he and I both recommend if you have the will, the way, and the opportunity to absolutely get a formal education in this, because there's no real replacing that. And I will say that, and you guys, if you're out there and you have firms and you're self-taught, the school of hard knocks is a difficult road to hoe sometimes. And I've told my story a million times, and that is I hired people who had the education, and I was the big picture, the business, ran the business, big picture, designed the rooms, and if something in there wasn't copacetic, just ran it by my people, and they said yay, nay, or get the hell out of here. No, they didn't say that, but actually I had one that did. That's another story. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. For our long form episode, remember on Mondays we have the mini news sesh. I wrote that myself. I'm quite a talented jingle writer, if I do say so myself. So every Monday we have like a little tidbit, like a 5 to 10 minute podcast with the latest in interior design, marketing, social media kind of news, or whatever hits my fancy that it's small and an actionable takeaway on the Mondays. And Wednesdays are always the interview with amazing guests like today's guest, Robert Ancill. So head on over to wingnutsocial.com if you need help marketing your interior design firm, your architect firm, if you're an interior design industry coach and you want to reach interior designers. Man, that's what we specialize in. So knock yourself out there. Wingnutsocial.com. If you are not at a point to where you can afford to delegate your marketing out, maybe you're just starting or solopreneur, or maybe you have an intern, maybe you have a marketing team in house and they just don't know what the hell they're doing. Check out Instagram for Interior Designers, which is our on-demand, downloadable online course. You can take it at your own pace. You can delegate that out to the little intern there and say, do everything just like this, do the research, do the workbooks, save those to our marketing file, and get us found. Get us found on Instagram so ideal clients can hire us. And that's at wingnutsocial.com to Wingnut Academy. We'll get you there. And that is it for this show, guys. Remember, until next time, to get out there, get uncomfortable, and be great. That's Jim Rohn, right? Good to Great, Jim Rohn?
Yeah,
I think that's who wrote that, yeah.
Collins? Was it Jim Collins?
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Or is it Jim Collins? I'm thinking of the sports guy.
It was a while ago that I read it.
Good to Great.
Yeah, but it was a good book.
Let me look. I'm a Good to Great author. I'm gonna Google that real quick. We'll just edit this out so I say it right. Jim Collins. Yeah. Okay. Hey, kids, and welcome to Design. I don't think that sounds good. I hear it. All right. La. Clip. All right. Hey kids, and welcome to Design by Wingnut Social. I'm your host, interior decorator Darla Jethro Powell, and today I had